Lena?
Yeah, I just had a crazy idea, which is the order of his name,
Ndandi neimwe
Quintus
pfungwa
Fabius
iri
Maximus
crazy
Gorgias.
inova
So the
order yezita
fifth,
rake
the
yekuti
voting,
Quintus
and
Fabius
then
Maximus
follows
Gauges.
maximum
Saka
flood, which is
yechishanu
the
poita voting
trifecta.
impotevera maximum flood inova trifecta.
Okay, I agree with you.
All right, ndotenderana newe.
I'm going to suggest
Ndichasuggesta kuti
when we did here, what was V star?
zvapataita apa V star yanga iri chii?
What does V star mean? V voting.
V kuvota.
The most important one, the one that you have to.
The most important.
Kwakakoshesesa kwacho.
When you take the name,
paunotora
we don't use the phrase most important. What phrase do we use? What word do we use, Gloria? Not most important, we use...
Gloria. Hatishandisi most important, toshandisa chii?
Not Waymarks.
Kwete Waymarks.
No.
The name.
Kwete. Zita.
Oh. Maximum.
Maximums.
Maximums.
So the most important one is the maximum one.
Saka chakakoshesesa ndiyo maximum.
The maximum what?
Maximum chii?
What's the flood mean? If you're going to use, if you're going to use Quintus Fabius Maximus Gauges, what are you saying the flood is?
Urukuti flood chi?
Maximum vote.
So we're going to tell what maximum means. Maximum what? Oh, what did you say?
The vote. Maximum vote.
That's
what it seems to me. So, if you want to find the maximum vote, which is V star here, then if you're going to use the general's name, you look at all you have is the number 5. Because we're defining the flood as vote from Fabius. I've understood that correctly. And if you want to find out when the maximum vote would take place, it's all based upon the number 5. And the number 5 ends up being July, and July is number 2.
Oh, you're silent again. If you could repeat, please.
On what we just done.
Could you repeat, please?
Yes. So what we've done is we've taken. We had 3 models. Aaron gave us. We've got to look for the mark of the beast. We've got to look at the shipwreck of democracy, Acts 27. I said I want to just say something on that in a moment. Then we had Quintus Fabius Maximus Gauges, which is found in Daniel 8:8, story of Pyrrhus, the Diadochi Wars. It's tucked into this history here, the Pyrrhic Wars. So it's in inspiration. I know we say it's not there, but I've always disagreed with that phraseology saying it's not there. I think it's there. So assuming it is there, I was going to ask what Al Gore was, but that's Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great and 4 generals. So we got that.
Alexander the Great.
We've taken the name. Quintus 5. Fabius is voting. Maximus Gauges is maximum flood. So that's all fine. And they asked what the flood is. Aaron gave us the definition of the biblical term of flood, meaning persecution and brought about by religious doctrine. So there's a doctrine, and a doctrine is a what? What's another word for doctrine?
Belief. Law.
Ideology. Who said that?
Linda said belief. Alyssa said law.
Law. I'm going to go with law. So there's a religious law, and failure to comply with the religious law brings on persecution. And Aaron gave us 2 places. Where was that?
maplace maviri
Daniel 9
ndekupi?
and
Daniel
Revelation
9
12.
naRevelation 12.
Okay, so
Alright, saka
Elder Parminder, could we say that
yes.
flood could also be church and state?
Elder Parminder togona kuti here flood zvakare
Why would you say
church
it's church
nestate.
and state?
Sei uchiti church and state.
Because that's Sunday law, is
Nekuti
when
ndo
church
Sunday law, ndo
has
apo
total
church
control over the state.
ine control zvachose pamusoro pestate.
So you're going to go
Saka,
to a different model,
uchaenda
church and
kune
state,
imwe model yakasiyana
to
yechurch nestate
speak about the
tutaure
mechanism for this
maererano
persecution.
nemechanism
I'm okay with that.
yepersecution iyi. Zvakanakira
There's a mechanism that actually persecutes the people, so
pane
we know that,
mechanism
and we know why it
inopersecute vanhu
happens
saka
when the church and
tozviziva.
state get
Tinoziva kuti
together,
sei zvichiitika kana
and the church and
makereke
state getting
akauya
together
pamwe chete.
is basically
Kereke nestate zvikauya pamwe chete
enforcement of religious dogma or religious doctrine.
ndiko kuenforce
So we've got religious. I'm going to put enforcement,
ezvitendero tichati enforcement,
and then that would be the state,
iyi inenge iri
and then that
state,
would be the church. Is that right, Gloria?
iyi
Is that what
iriyo
you're saying?
church. Ndizvo here Gloria? Ndo zvauri
Yes.
tiri kutaura here?
Okay, so that's
Hongu.
fine.
Saka zvakanaka.
So if that's the biblical definition of flood,
Saka kana
I
iriyo
don't think there's going to be any
definition
argument to that
yeflood,
or any
handifungi kuti panenge
disagreement.
paine argument
When
kana
we use
kusaudzana ipapo. Patinoshandisa
Pyrrhus to now
Pyrrhus
define flood,
kudefina flood,
can we use the biblical definition of flood,
tinogona kushandisa
Are
here
you allowed
definition
to do that,
yemubhaibheri yeflood.
Aaron?
Tinobvumidzwa kuita izvozvo here Aaron?
I don't know. I'm not
Okay.
sure. Yeah,
Handizivi,
don't know.
handinyatsi kuziva.
You're not sure of my
Handisivi.
question or the parameters, or what you're not
Haunzwisisi
sure about?
mubvunzo
And
wangu
maybe
here.
if you ask it once more, I might sink in a bit.
Pamwe mukavubvunza
Okay,
zvakare
so
ndogona kufunga nezvavo.
We're doing a
Saka,
study on
tiri
books
kuita
of Daniel and
chidzidzo
Revelation,
pamabhuku
and
aDaniel
you go into Daniel
nazvakazarurwa.
in Daniel
Topinda
9
muna
and you see a
Daniel.
flood.
Daniel
You're
9
gonna-
woona flood.
You're going to pull out, follow the rules. You're going to go to Revelation
Woteedzera
12.
mutemo.
You're going
Unoenda
to
Revelation 12.
not look at any history.
Usina
You're going to
kutarisa
look at the
nhoroondo.
context of both of those,
Wotarisa
which is
context
basically the
yezvese
imagery,
zviri
the
zviviri.
symbology,
Inova
and then
image
you can do a
kana
word
kuti
search, or you can
masingle
do lots of things
wotsvaga
and then you're gonna
website
work
yako
out
woita zvinhu zvakawanda
based
woita
upon the
work out
imagery, not upon the
maererano
events,
nemaimages aripo kwete
that
nemaevents
what's going on there
kuti chiri
is
kuitika apa
some kind of persecution that's coming upon the
imwe
church.
mhando yepersecution iri
Do
kuuya
you agree with that,
kukereke.
Aaron?
Izvi
I wish I
zvinotenderana
never
zvaro.
asked you to repeat it. Now I'm more confused, so I'm going to stick with I don't know.
Ndasina kukubvunza
Okay.
ndane confusion saka ndichangoti handizivi.
We're in the Bible and we picked the
It's in
word, we
Bible.
found the word flood, found it in Daniel 9.
Tona
What does
shoko
that
rekuti
mean?
flood
You
rinowanikwa
can do a
kuna
word
Daniel
search on
9.
it and you go to
Zvinorevei.
Revelation 12.
Unogona kuita word
When you
search apa
look at
unozoenda
the
naRevelation 12.
context in the Bible
Unotarisa
of
context
those two
muBible
words in
yemavara maviri aya
the verse, in the chapter, and in the books,
muvhesi macho
you can build a
muchapter
model that
nemabhuku
says
unogona
this
kuvaka
is
model inoti
persecution of the church.
iyi
agree with
ipersecution
that?
yechechi. Izvi zvinotenderana nazvo here
Yes.
izvi.
Okay.
Hongu.
What you can then do is you can
Right,
refine
chaunozogona kuita ndezvekuti
further,
unogona
both with the help of spirit of
kuwedzera
prophecy
kutsetsenura
and looking at historical
spiritual
context.
prophecy
Because then you
neBible
can say,
wotarisa futi
when does the
historical
Daniel 9
context.
thing
Nokuti
happen?
unogona kuzoti
When does the
saka zvinhu
Revelation 12
zvaDaniel
thing
9
happen?
zvinoitika
And then
pano
when you look at the
zvinhu
history,
zvaRevelation 12
you get a
zvinoitika pano
confirmation that
paunozotarisa
that symbology
nhoroondo
had a
unoona
historical
confirmation
fulfillment.
yekuti
You agree with that?
symbology
Yes.
iyi yakava
Okay,
nefulfillment
so that's the standard way of approaching
unotenderana
all of
nazvo
that.
here izvi. Hongu. Iyi ndiyo
What
standard
you've done
approach
is
kune
you've
zvese izvi
taken the
zvaunenge
word
waita
in
zvekuti unenge
context
watora
and
vara
then you've built a
mucontext
model.
wobva wabuilda model
That's all I
yako.
wanted to say. Is that you agree with that?
Ndozvandachida kutaura.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
Unotenderana nazvo
Okay,
here.
so
Hongu,
now
alright, ndotenderana.
we've gone
Saka
to,
izvezvi
I'm going to call it a different book. And this is
saka
the book
taenda
of
kubhuku
Pyrrhus,
rakasiyana. Iri
It's an,
bhuku raPyrrhus.
Apocrypha. The
Ririmo
book of Pyrrhus,
muapocrypha.
there's a name in there
Bhuku
called
raPyrrhus
Quintus
mune
Fabius
zita
Maximum
ririmo
Gurges.
rinonzi Quintus
And we're
Fabius
going to do
Maximum
one step
Gurges.
further. We're going to say, we don't know what
Tichaita imwe
Gurges
step
means,
further.
but we
Toti
say Gurges
hatisi kuti
means
Gurges
flood.
zvinorevei.
So now we've
Toti
got the
Gurges
word
zvinoreva
flood
flood.
in the book of
Taane vara
Pyrrhus.
rekuti
And
flood
it's
mubhuku
connected with
raPyrrhus.
Quintus Fabius
Zvinenge
Maximus
zviri
Gurges.
connected kuna
Sorry,
Quintus
Maximus.
Fabius
Take the word
Maximum
Gurges out.
Gurges.
What do we do with that
Mbomira
flood?
Gurges tongoti Maximus.
What
I
can
don't
we
think-
not do?
Yeah, I don't think with confidence we can import the biblical definition of that symbol into you've called it an apocryphal book, because if you found the word flood in World War II, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so hopefully everybody understands the point that Aaron just made. That's the point I wanted us to see. That when you take the word flood in the word in the name now, from that general, from the book of Pyrus, you can't use the standard Adventist, if I call it that the biblical, forget Advent, you can't take the biblical definition of flood and import it into the book of Pyrus. You can't do that. It might end up being that, but you can't do that as your first step. They're two separate things. So the flood in the book of Pyrus does not mean the flood in Daniel 9. Are we okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So in the Bible, flood means persecution. We know that. Now, when we come to the book of Pyrus and we come to Gurges, which means flood, does that flood there mean persecution, or could it mean something different? And the question is, how would we know? So my question to Gloria is, how do you know, Gloria, that it's... if you don't know, I don't want to put you on the spot. Just say I don't know, and we'll make it a wider field. Don't feel under any pressure. Why do you think that flood isn't persecution? Why do you think it's something else? And if it's something else, what is it?
I would say doctrine. It's like the Rome coming to the scene, rising to the peak there.
So Rome has got a doctrine. So the doctrine is a law. We've established doctrine is law. So now there's a maximum law. Is that right?
Yes, their purpose to bring about the maximum law. Yeah.
It's not the purpose of it. When we talk about the maximum flood, it means at that point, it's the maximum law.
Yeah, it wasn't done at that time. So maybe we have to extend it to January when Trump gets into power. There.
I don't know if you know. So what? Actually, no, you don't have any skin in the game. So you're saying that. Okay, no. Let me step back. If you're going to make that January, did you say when he at the inauguration? Is that what you said?
Yes. So I'm extending Sunday law to a period again. Yeah, sorry.
That's fine. I don't mind that. So is it January 20th?
January 20.
Yes.
Okay. So the problem with doing that. What's the problem with doing that? Someone tell me what the problem in what Gloria has just done. If no one's sure, I'll tell you what I think the problem is.
Except the voting, the marker that we were choosing was voting, and he's already been voted in. So it's not each of the different periods on our list were voting.
Okay, so I'm going to phrase it this way. I'm not saying I disagree. When we spoke about the flood from the Bible, Aaron gave us the 2 Bible verses, and we didn't prove it, we didn't check. He said it's persecution. We took him at his word, and then he said contextually that persecution is brought about by religious doctrine. And then, I think it was Gloria that said that religious law that brings about persecution can only happen when you have a church-state relationship. So what we did was we used some kind of methodology which has many levels, many rules, if you like, to come up with a comprehensive understanding of what the flood was then. So then we go to the book of Pyrrhus. I've called it the book of Pyrrhus because I want us to see that we not only can, but we are required to compartmentalize things. And then if you can bring things together, you have either compartmentalized or already compartmentalized, then that's another step. But often you can't. So we go to the book of Pyrrhus, we find Gurgis, which means flood, and we say, how do we define what that word flood is? And if you don't do it correctly, what you end up doing is causing yourself problems. So I'll just walk us through the steps. It was suggested just now that flood means doctrine, just like it did in the Bible version. Doctrine means law. And if you get to the maximum place where you're going to get all of that, the suggestion would be that it might be January the 20th, when Trump is crowned president. What's the problem if you did that?
That's not the maximum point of law.
So it's not the maximum point of law. We can maybe it might be. Maybe it might be we don't know if it's the maximum or not. And I know you're going to say it's to do with the law, but I want to make another point that is already on the board. This is January 5th. And in the name, we already have a date. What's the date that we have?
July, November, both of both.
Okay, so you said November because you used the 5th of November. So we've got July. And I'll put November. I don't know if Aaron was saying that flippantly, or if he's serious. I think it was flippant. So we've got July already there. What we can't then do is say, in July, there was a subject of voting, and that was the maximum flood. Or we're saying, in July, there was a subject of voting, which leads to the maximum flood. So the question is, does July lead you to the maximum flood, or is it the maximum flood?
Leads you to the maximum flood.
Who are those two people?
This is Manuel.
Manuel? And?
Yeah, I think July and November, they have to be merged into one single.
They can't be merged into one symbol. They're two separate waymarks. I believe you can't merge two significant things.
This term that is used, like the red wave, for example, which is a winning by a landslide in November. I was thinking that might be something that we can refer us to the maximum flood, but it's up to you.
Who commented after Manuel?
Yes.
Someone commented after Manuel. It was a woman's voice. Gloria. I'm not sure what you said, Gloria. Sorry.
I just said leads to.
Okay, so if it leads to it, then you're saying that July is not the Sunday law, it's another waymark. Is that correct?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
No, the logic would be saying that.
Yes.
So if that's the case, what is July then?
Part of the agitation.
July would be the place where you
July
begin
ndiyo inenge iri
the
nzvimbo
maximum flood.
yaunotanga maximum flood.
And if the maximum flood is an event in the future,
Kana
and we're
maximum
marking the
flood iri
maximum
chiitiko
flood
chiri
as the
kumberi,
Sunday law,
tichimaka
then
maximum
you
flood
end up
seSunday
getting to a
law.
place that
Then
July
unopedzera wasvika panzvimbo
is in the
yekuti
agitation.
July iri muagitation.
Everybody is okay with that?
Munhu wese ari okay nazvo here?
So it seems to me
Saka kwandiri zvinoita sekunge
that if you take the word 4 letters,
ukatora
QFMG,
vara iri rine
that
maletters
you end
mana
up adding things to say from
unopedzera
July, which was the subject of
wedzera
voting,
zvinhu
it
kuti
leads to the
kubva pana
maximum flood,
July
as
inova nyaya
opposed to
yekuvhota
saying it is the
zvinotisvitsa
maximum flood.
pamaximum flood pachinhambo chekuti ndiyo maximum flood.
Who wants to venture which is the right way of approaching that? Just
Ndianoda
with methodology.
kutiudza kuti ndiyo right way yekuapproacha here kana kwete tichishandisa methodology.
I believe it leads to the maximum flood. And I believe
Yatanotenda kuti
the
inotisvitsa
maximum takes place
kumaximum
in
flood.
November.
Anofunga
Tell me
November.
why you tell me from the name why you think
Maximum.
it you have to you
tiudze kubva
put the idea of
pazita
leads to, not is. Why is it leads
ichitiudza
and not
kuti
is?
inoti papfungwa yekuti inotisvitsa kumaximum flood. Sei uri kuti inotisvitsa uri kuti
Well,
haisi
we
ndiyo
have a
maximum flood.
July is
Can't-
July. We're gonna say that is the Q, which is the first of the
July
4 letters,
ndiyo yatichati ndiyo Q.
and then we have the private
Inotanga
beings which have to
zita
do
I.
with election, like
Then
marking
November ine chekuita neelection
marking November.
tichimaka November.
So now you're going to use them progressively. You're going to say it goes from July to November.
So uchazvishandisa
then you're going to say the last 3 is
progressive.
all
Woti
November.
inotanga pana July yoenda pana November. Woti
Yes,
chitatu
I believe
yekupedzisira ndo
so.
November. Iye ndo
You know-
zvaatenda.
Where do you get F as November?
F unoiwana saNovember
The
papi.
private beings that have to do with
Pamafafa
election.
And where do you get
Anechekuita
Q
And also-
equals July?
Saka Q uti
the
July unoiwana
Quintus.
Quintus.
Okay, so you're going to say Q is for
Alright, saka
July
uchati
and
Q
F
ndeya
is
July,
for November.
F
Yes.
ndeya November.
How can you be sure that this name
Unova
is
neshuwa sei
sequential,
kuti zita iri rine
not all
sequence
at one point?
kwete kuti riri
Because-
papoint imwe chete.
Because we have the elections in November.
No,
Nekuti
that's
tine
not an
ma-elections
argument. You
muna
can't use that
November.
argument. Tell me
Yeah, is
why
argument.
you're
Haugona
sure
ushandisa argument
that
ndiudze
this
kuti sei
name
uine
is a
shuwa kuti
sequential
zita
step.
iri i-step iri ine sequence.
So that it marks a dispensation, not a waymark.
If that's the
Rukumaka
case, then
dispensation
November
kwete waymark.
would
Kana iriyo
lead
nyaya yacho
to
saka
a
November
maximum flood. It
inotisvitsa
wouldn't be the maximum flood itself.
inenge isiriyo
So
maximum
therefore,
flood
November
pache
would
zvayo.
not be the Sunday law
Naizvozvo
if you're going to use
November inenge isiriyo
sequentialism.
Sunday law.
You'd
kana
go from
ndizoshandisa
July
sequentialism.
here.
Unobva pana
Oops.
July apa.
You'd go from July, step 1, to
Unobva
November,
pana
step 2,
July step
and
1
then
kuenda
you'd
kuna
go to
November step
the
2.
maximum flood, which
Wozosvika
would be step 3.
pamaximum
So the
flood
maximum flood would be
inova step
sometime
3.
in the future.
Saka
It
maximum
wouldn't be
flood inenge
November.
iri imwe nguva kufuture inenge isiri November.
You can't use sequentialism and then
Haugona
stop it where
kushandisa
you feel
sequentialism.
it can be stopped.
Wozongomira
Because you're
paunongodhanga
making
chimira.
Q is
Nekuti
step 1 and
ukuita
FMG
Q
is step
kuti
2.
step 1.
And
FMG
I would
would
suggest if
step
you don't use
Ini
sequentialism,
ndosuggesta kuti ukashandisa
the natural way to
sequentialism.
do it would be
Natural way
July,
yekuzviita ndeyekuti July,
November, and
November,
a further event.
then chimwe chiitiko chekumberi.
I did something that you kind of quenched that desire on me to use your methodology that you use with the 20 by 20 numbers. And I began
Methodology
adding-
2520
The reason
No,
why
but-
we shouldn't be using any 2520 at this
hatisi
stage in
kufana
this
kunge
discussion.
tichishandisa 2520
Yes,
pastage inoyi
but would
mudiscussion
you
iyi.
let me just just give you what I got, you know. July
Yes,
1st.
Manuel, I can only give you what you want to say if it's in the context of this discussion.
Yes, it is. It has to do with that.
So tell me,
saka
you have to tell me, if you're going to go from July to November, why does maximum flood end in November and not be a third event?
isiri chiitiko chechitatu.
Tell me why it's not a third event. Why is it connected to November? If you're going to use sequentialism. You can't start a method and stop it halfway through.
Yes, I understand. But the thing is that the elections is like, for us, it was a decisive moment that Sunday law had come, because
we can't use those arguments. This is a foundational argument. This is either one event or a sequence of events. And maximum gauges is one word, one phrase. So that would be quintus, Fabius, maximum gauges. Do I have a sequence of events or one event?
Either unechitiko one kana kuti
you can't mix and match them.
Une event one. Haugoni kumixa.
And however interesting or likely it may appear that November would be the date or July would be the date, depending on a person's perspective. I'm not interested in the events themselves. What I'm interested in is how we build up this argument. So what we have done so far in our study is we have redefined what the word flood means. In the Bible, it's persecution, and in our conversation, it's not that. And I know Gloria suggested that it was religious doctrine or religious law. And the problem with that is you have to take the word flood in its context. And the context that we have is the name. And if you say in the fifth, whatever the fifth is, it doesn't matter what the date is, what the waymark. In the fifth, there was a vote. Then you say maximum flood.
Maximum flood.
That flood has to be connected to its context. And the only context you have is either number 5 or a vote.
Yeah.
And that's why someone put here, flood is vote.
Flood vote.
If that's correct, it seems to me that it likely is, then we have to ask, is this name a symbol of a singular event or a sequence of events? And if it's a singular event, then on the 5th or the number 5, there was a vote, and that was the maximum issue or the maximum vote. That was the maximum vote. That's what option 1 tells you. Option 2 says, first there was the 5th, then there was a vote, and that leads to the maximum flood. And then again, contextually, that would have to be maximum vote if we're going to define Fabius's vote. So I'm going to just stop there and tell me, I want to get some feedback, if people have not understood or that they have understood. I'm going to call it my suggestion of how to approach this issue.
Yes, understood. I don't have any questions.
Okay. Anyone else?
I think it's been Victoria, Mary, Christine all saying yes, agree, very helpful, understand.
Okay, so I'm going to say that I've got a consensus of enough people that they've understood how to try to approach this problem. That's what I've tried to do, is to say, how would we approach this issue? For me, we still haven't properly nailed down voting compared to the Sunday law. That's an attack upon us. In our defense, because the best form of defense is attack. You can go to any Christian in the world and ask them what the mark of the beast is. And what they're going to tell you it is. They're going to tell you it's anything and everything except what?
Voting.
No, from an Adventist position, except Sunday.
Oh.
Sunday law is a uniquely Adventist argument. You can't find it in inspiration. Adventists made it up with logic. And that's why there's no consensus in the world about what the mark of the beast is. You go from a symbol called mark of the beast and you go to Sunday law. So when I say voting, we haven't properly nailed it down. What I'm saying is, in the same way that Adventists haven't fully nailed down the Sunday law, and I think that you can't. So if we are okay that the marker is voting, you have to make your bed and you have to lie in it. And the problem is, many of us aren't doing that. We don't realize we're not doing it because we've still got religious dogma in our minds from our legacy of being Adventist. You'll find, both in this discussion that we've had now and what people have said in the movement, is that we're expecting what? Laws, LGBTQ laws, abortion laws, this law, that law, posting laws. There's lots of laws being spoken about. But if we're going to say we're going to define the Sunday law, Ellen White is very clear. You'll have Sunday law after Sunday law after Sunday law. That's what the issue is. And then you get to a place where you say, now, all these Sunday laws, because laws have punishments connected with them, you break this law, and now there's going to be death, probation. If we're going to switch from a Sunday law model to a voting model, before the Sunday law, we have all these votes going on. Have we seen evidence of lots of votes going on in the past several years?
Yes.
For sure. So then we're going to be looking for votes in the future. So if voting is the marker for the Sunday law, we have a problem. We'll deal with the problem in a second because we need to close it in a second, in a bit. Hold that thought for a moment. We've come up with all of these events. And we've just said, I've said glibly, other people said it much better, 2024 is the year of elections. We have different options of what the maximum flood is. And I've said, sorry, of the Sunday law. I asked, give us some options. Someone said Mark of the Beast. We had the Shipwreck of Democracy. And then we had Quintus Fabius Maximum Gurges. So when we went to that one, we gave where it's found. And then we said, well, what does all of that mean? How do we know that that would be the marker for the Sunday law? And we've got the number 5, we've got voting, and then we've got the maximum flood or the maximum thing. And contextually, I'm saying that thing is voting. So, how we approach this, just as a concept, don't worry about the dates or the RNC or the elections or anything. Quintus Fabius Maximum Gurgis, if that is the thing, the symbol that we're using, we ask ourselves, does that symbolize a singular event or does it signify a sequence of events? So you have to ask yourself that question. And I'm guessing that we have 2 camps in our movement. We have one that says it's a singular event and one that says it's a sequence of events. If it's a sequence of events, then we have to find out what each of those things mean. And it would be 1, 2, 3, because maximum isn't a thing itself. It's talking about the maximum gurges or the maximum flood. It's pointing to the big thing here. So if that's the big thing, the gurges, which is what would the thing be? That's why people have said that the thing, the gurges, is the Fabius. Hopefully that's okay. So if the Sunday law is all about these votes that are happening, we've got something missing. What's missing in this Spirit of Prophecy story? Gloria mentioned it before. Aaron's mentioned it as well, I think, in a kind of a way. What's missing?
Religious persecution?
Sorry?
Religious persecution.
Okay, so what's missing? We're just calling it. If you're going to put religious, then you're going to put religious in the future. So you still want to keep with religious? We'll begin with persecution. So if you had persecution somewhere in this story, you would have persecution there. People are voting. Why? How does that voting lead to persecution? How does voting in and of itself lead to persecution? Because this one's simple. Sunday laws, these laws end up leading to persecution. So you can see that. How does a vote lead to persecution?
Because depending which party, either the Democratic or Republican, will take that right away, that voting right away from us.
Okay, so the fact that you take that you're not allowed to vote. So can you see what the problem with that argument is, the way you've phrased it, Gloria? Vote 1. What was vote 1? There's a machinery, a government machinery, and in that machinery, a vote took place. Is everybody okay with that story?
Yes.
Okay. Vote 2. Same story?
About voting? Yes.
Yeah. There's the machinery of the United States. And a vote takes place, and whatever the vote was about, it all happened within the confines of the machinery of the United States. Yes?
Yes. Agreed.
Okay. What's V star Is it exactly the same? And V-star V3, are they going to be exactly the same?
As part of the machinery?
The machinery that's existing says we're now going to vote on this subject, and it's business as normal.
Business is normal.
Oh, is that what we believe? Is that what we're saying?
Go with what you already wrote. It's the most important, or the maximum. Part of the machinery, but the most important.
I want to know how we conceptualize what voting is and what persecution is.
Can I say voting give individual an authority to persecute or to have that power to do things?
Can you simplify what you've said?
I was saying that the voting gave individual power.
Voting gives individual power. And how does individual power lead to persecution?
Individual power inosvitsvitsa papersecution sei?
They can impose the idea to other people.
So they enforce the idea. So you're going to have individuals persecuting individuals. Is that what you believe the Sunday law is?
No.
I want to maybe people are lost. Hopefully we're okay up to this point here. We haven't answered which one of the two it is. But if we're just going to say the marker for Sunday laws is voting, we have a problem because voting in and of itself doesn't do anything. And I want to go back to what Aaron said here. Shipwreck of democracy. So that means democracy falls. What do we mean by democracy falling? At any one of these 5 way, we've got 6 way marks now. Where did democracy fall?
I think if you elect a known dictator, and I believe Trump, everyone could tell he was a dictator when he tried to overthrow the election on January the 6th.
So we can't vote in. So if the people of a country say we're going to vote a bad person, is that the definition that democracy isn't in play?
No, stealing elections. So democracy is free and fair elections. So once you try and overturn an election, steal an election, you're overturning democracy. Once the people support you in that and vote for you, he's a known dictator and they voted him in because of January the 6th.
Okay, people don't know this, but secretly he repented of that. Is he okay?
It doesn't matter. No, because he's never denied it since, and he's been asked a number of times.
Yeah, that's his public persona. Secretly, he said, I shouldn't have done that. Bad call. Is everything okay now? He did that on November the 1st.
So he says, I'm not going to be a dictator anymore, but I'm just going to tell everyone that I am.
That's just showmanship. I have to keep my public image, but I know it's not really good. I wouldn't do that again. I apologize. I'm really sorry. That's a bad thing. People misunderstood me, and I have to keep up my macho image.
Yes.
Otherwise, I lose vote. So tell me where democracy fell.
So democracy was attacked on January the 6th, but if you're in your scenario, then they didn't. He's a known dictator, but they actually, in fact, without realizing it, voted in someone that's not going to dictate anymore. So the people wanted a dictator, so the people tried to shipwreck democracy. Now you got two different things playing out because he tricked them and he's not actually a dictator anymore. So they got the mark of the beast. But he's not the beast anymore. I don't know how it works. I don't know how that would work.
When we talk about democracy, how do we define what democracy is? Is democracy the machinery of how a country elects its government?
I guess, yeah, I'll say yes.
So in November, did that machinery, the way it operates, did that change compared to 4 years ago?
No, it was a free and fair election, which is another reason you can only place it at the November 5th Waymark, not July. Because yeah.
If it was a free and fair election, why is it not? Why is democracy fail?
So if we, it's because he's a dictator. So from that day onwards, you don't have democracy in America anymore because the people chose a dictator. So if you voted Kim Jong-un in, from that day onwards, North Korea is a dictatorship. Even though you voted him in, you wanted a dictator.
So what's the definition of democracy? It can't just be free and fair elections and proportional representation and electoral college. None of those things are the definition now of democracy. Democracy is now about the pedigree of the person that we make the boss.
In a prophetic sense, yes, because we know Trump is a dictator from prophecy, from our midnight cry message. So we have just voted in a dictator. We know Biden was not a dictator. So in July, we didn't have a dictator in the White House.
And I'm still not clear. It doesn't have to be Aaron, anybody. What democracy is then? Because if democracy is the machinery of how a country operates, I didn't see any fall that ended up happening. There was no fall in democracy on January 6th. Democracy didn't fall then. It got battered a bit, but its integrity remained. And then 3 and a bit years later, in November this year, democracy did its thing again, flawlessly, perfectly. There might be some gerrymandering and all that kind of stuff and restrictions, whatever. But it did everything that you asked of it. So when we talk about the shipwreck of democracy or the fall of democracy or the fall of America, we're talking about something else than the machinery of democracy. And I want us to be clear on that, what we're saying when we define what democracy is and what's fallen. Because the democracy was intact in November 2020. In November 2020, democracy was intact on January 2021. And democracy was intact July 24 and November 24. It did everything right. There was no laws broken, no rules. Everybody followed everything correctly. So if we define democracy as machinery, the process, I don't think anything's smashed up.
True, correct. Good point.
Okay, we have a couple of people, and we've got a couple of minutes. I'm going to finish in 7 minutes. Who wants to speak first?
Well, the machinery is broken because Trump was not held accountable, and the machinery delayed all the things, and this is why it was broken, because the Supreme Court was unable to come to a decision soon enough to get Trump out of the pictures for running again. So the machinery was broken by allowing him to actually run again.
Let me defend the Supreme Court and America after that brutal attack from you, David. The slowness of the machinery is not indicative of its brokenness. It's indicative of other things about it. It's overbearing, it's too cumbersome, but it's not a definition of it being broken. Because plenty of other times, the slowness has been America's greatest asset. The slowness of the process isn't the definition it's broken. It could be because it's always been that way. It's always been slow. So it didn't suddenly just become slow now. So we can't argue that it was too slow.
Well, I could say that there has never been a person to come and do it January 6th, right? So that forced the wheels to move quickly. They had 4 years to do this. Well, let's just say 3 years to do this. It forced, democracy to speed up, because no one had ever tried to done that before to the country. And in that respect, the system was skewed because of his appointees to push it down in that direction, I might say.
If we're going to say democracy is the machinery, he and his cabinet tried to overthrow democracy. I can't remember the name of it. The January 6th Commission, the Democrats did that investigation that took a couple of years, I think. They demonstrated, whether you believe them or not, that democracy was being attacked. And what they mean by that is the law, the machinery was being subverted, but it never broke down. So I'm not saying that I've got no problem with January the 6th being an attack against democracy, but democracy didn't get shipwrecked on January the 6th. And the argument is not about who were the culprits and who were the defenders, who were the good and bad people in that story. It's about democracy. Democracy was attacked in 2021 and it survived. It survived for the next 3 and a bit years to the place that now, just a couple of weeks ago, it operated flawlessly. No problems. So I'm not sure what you're saying, David, but someone else wanted to make the point.
Elder Parminder, I was just wondering if we could just juxtapose it with actually not juxtapose, but compare it with the tyranny, because the opposite of democracy is the tyranny, and the tyranny is ruled by one, or the power is concentrated in one person or a group, in one group, rather than in democracy where the power is spread. The power, is held by the majority of it.
I understand all of that, but nothing's broken in November. It might break in the future.
Yeah, it's not.
So the shipwreck of democracy hasn't happened if we're going to define democracy as the machinery.
True, I agree with you.
Okay, on that point,
I want to add one thing. I want to add one more thing.
Go ahead.
I will go back to your studies of voting right. As you said, like, you have to vote right. So I will define democracy as voting right. Voting the right way.
Voting the right way?
Yeah.
Did they vote the right way in November?
No.
They didn't?
They choose the wrong person.
Choosing the wrong person isn't the wrong voting methodology.
It's just power of choice.
Which is democracy.
Yes.
I still don't see how democracy shipwrecked from any point in the past to today.
Isn't the shipwreck of Act 27 of the United States not democracy?
Shipwreck 27 United States.
Sure.
Democracy. Hongu.
We've gone 2 hours for our meeting. I need to close it before I get into trouble. Many more trouble that I'm already in. I want to hopefully pick up this, carry on this theme in a future study, but I want us to see a couple of points. Alan White makes it difficult to be able to define where we are in history. The movement has shifted away from a Sunday law to voting as its marker for Sunday law. We did a comparison from Spirit of Prophecy to us, and it's gone from Sunday law to voting. There's still a lot of things in our model that are missing. There are gaps. How you get from voting to persecution. There's gaps in this when we start doing it, and that becomes significant when we start trying to identify what the waymarks are. We've got 6 events to choose from. I've said 5, but we will go to 6. And which one of them is the Sunday law? How would we know? So we've gone to these various markers. We've got that, Mark of the Beast, Shipwreck of Democracy, which should be Shipwreck of USA, Quintus Fabius Maximum Gurges. We spent a lot of time discussing that, and we saw that we can't take the flood from the Bible and project it onto the flood of that person's name. We also saw 2 ways of looking at that symbol as a singular event or a sequence of events. If it's a sequence of events, then there are 3 steps in that. 1, 2, 3. If it's a singular event, that's all straightforward. I'm suggesting that the word flood, in its context, means to vote. And so we've got that voting with respect to Sunday law. And then the last point we spoke about is this idea of the fall of democracy and the shipwreck of democracy and how that works. And I'm not saying democracy doesn't get shipwrecked. What I am saying is that we need to be clear about what happens and how it operates. I want to thank you for this great time that at least I've had. I hope you've enjoyed yourselves too. Let's close with a word of prayer. Holy God, I want to thank you for your goodness and mercy. Ask and pray that you would be with us, bless us and guide us. May the subject of the Sunday law continue to be discussed in our movement. May we be challenged. May we challenge one. May we try to understand how to grapple with these symbols using correct methodology and logic. Be with us and bless us. Pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
May we get your notes?
I will send the notes from last week and this week. Yes, I apologize for that.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Elder Parminder.